Kia ora, I'm Pat, and this is the happiness spectrum. This is the second in a series of talks on personal management and how to lead a life worth living, and through this, be happy. And this talk is on basic rights and needs and also about strength-based philosophy, two concepts that underpin my approach to personal management. So let's start with basic human rights and needs. What are they? Can you lead a life worth living and be happy if your basic human rights and needs are not met? It's a tricky question because, to a degree, basic rights are historically and culturally specific for each individual. What follows is an introduction to the subject to help you make up your own mind as to whether you can be happy if your human rights are not met. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In part as a consequence of the atrocities of the Second World War, the United Nations developed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This was adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1948. The declaration consists of 30 articles affirming the individual human rights of everybody. And the preamble to this declaration starts: whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. And each of the articles states a specific right. For example, Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 25, everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing and medical care and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. And it's interesting, if wordy, to see the full declaration, and it can be found on the UN website, or if you want to find the link, you can go to the website happinessspectrum.jimdofree.com. A much simpler way of looking at basic rights is to look at the work of Oxfam, the global organisation that fights inequality and poverty. It in part has a rights-based approach to their work, and they developed a global charter for basic rights that has perhaps an easier way to understand human rights issues. They say every person has a basic right to a home, clean water, enough to eat, a safe environment, protection from violence, equality of opportunity, a say in their future, an education, a livelihood, and healthcare. And this was taken from Words into Action, Basic Rights in the Campaign Against World Poverty. For Oxfam, a lack of these rights is the basis of much world poverty. Each of these rights can be expressed differently for different cultures, but the list is a good way to understand basic rights. For example, a home can mean many things, not necessarily a house. And personalize it. Can you lead a life worth living and be happy if one or more of these rights are not met? Not sure. Another way of looking at human rights and needs is through Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a motivational theory in psychology and often depicted as a 5-tier pyramid of hierarchical need. The 5 levels of need are physiological needs. The physiological needs include the basic needs for survival, such as food, clothing, air, shelter, and the homeostatic processes like excretion, etc. And then there's a level of safety needs, and then a level of love and belonging, self-esteem, and finally, at the top of the pyramid, self self-actualization. A bit of a wordy phrase, that last one, but self-actualization really is about achieving your potential. It's about achieving your full creativity as a human being. And if you want to see a diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of need pyramid, then you can go to the website happinessspectrum.jimdofree.com. Each level of need is dependent upon the ones below being met. We are living things, so our physiological needs have to be met. We have to also feel secure within our home, our village and community, etc. Only then can our psychological needs be met. Self-fulfillment and achieving one's full potential only comes when all the other needs are met. So, do we have a right to happiness? For me, it's still a difficult question. A rights-based analysis is rational, but happiness is an emotion. So except when someone is in absolute poverty or need, experience has taught me, usually when collaborating with other people, that you can be happy when working towards meeting a basic human right. But that's different to having a right to happiness. However, it does reinforce my thought that happiness comes only when you have a purpose and lead a meaningful life. So let's go on to another concept on personal management and how to lead a life worth living and be happy that I think underpins a lot of what I say. This is strength-based. It's a guiding philosophy and it's a collaborative approach to positive personal change. It's more than just cooperation. It expects the active participation and understanding by the individual in that process. As social beings, so much of our success comes from collaborating with others towards shared purpose and objectives. And this is equally so when we pursue a life worth living. So let's have a bit of an overview of strength-based. The strength-based approach is based on values and attitudes. It is values and attitudes, rather than skills and knowledge, that are the primary drivers of processes and outcomes. Skills and knowledge are mobilized as resources to serve principles that enable change. Doing otherwise can lead you to act only as an expert in your field, and you can work against empowerment and self-determination. So it becomes about you rather than about the person who is trying to change. I've used the strength-based approach as a way of working to help find solutions in the face of difficulties and to achieve fulfillment, i.e. a life worth living, learning, and through this, finding happiness. It is a guiding philosophy. It embraces positive attitudes about people and their potential, focusing on their strengths, aspirations, and resources as a means of bringing about change. It honors people's potential and treats them as experts on their own lives and experiences. And it is a compassionate approach. It's a supportive approach, and it's about the individual, and it's not about you. The essence of the strengths approach is captured in the following set of core statements. It's a philosophy for working with people to bring about change. It's an approach to people that is primarily dependent upon positive attitudes about dignity, capacities, rights, uniqueness, and commonalities. It emphasizes people's ability to be their own agents of change by creating conditions that enable them to control and direct processes of change they engage in. It creates conditions that enable people to identify, value, and mobilize their strengths and capacities in the process of that change. It provides and mobilizes resources in a way that complements people's existing strengths and resources as opposed to compensating for perceived deficits. It's not about you've got a problem. It acknowledges and addresses power imbalances between people. It seeks to identify and address social, personal, cultural, and structural constraints to people's growth and self-determination. And it acknowledges and addresses power dynamics, cultures, and structures that are incongruent with social justice. A strength-based approach to happiness uses these statements to help guide personal self-management as you act to bring about individual change and lead a life worth living. And with it comes the consequence of happiness. And if you're interested in that strength-based philosophy, I've made reference to the Strengths Approach, a strength-based resource for sharing power and creating change by Wayne McCashin, published by St. Luke's Innovative Resources in 2005. The next talk is about purpose and passion, and I visualize what it would be like to live in a world without birdsong.